It's 6 o'clock. I'm calling to order this regular meeting of the City Council of the City of Bandera. We're at the Conference Center at Best Western Hotel at 711 Main Street. It's May the 20th, 2021. All council members are present. The marshal is present. The city secretary is present, and the administrator is present. Item 2 is the invocation and pledge. If you would stand for the pledge and the invocation, the flag is right there. Will you lead us in prayer, please?
Yes, ma'am. Most gracious and loving Heavenly Father, thank you for bringing us all together this evening. We ask for your blessings upon this meeting. Thank you for this glorious day we've had today. Lord, we ask for your blessings on the City Council of the City of Bandera as they make decisions that impact all of our lives in the City of Bandera. Lord, mostly, Lord, we'd like to thank you for your Son who died upon the cross for our many sins. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
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 I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Item 3 is a proclamation. A member of the Gypsies named Vince Myers came to me and brought to me made me aware that May is National Bike Safety Month, Motorcycle Safety Month. So, in light of that, and there's Stephanie now. Where's Vince?
He unfortunately had to work late.
Okay. Well, it's her husband. This is Stephanie Myers. So this is the proclamation of the City of Bandera proclaiming May 2020 as Motorcycle Safety and Awareness Month. And I really have read this before, I promise. Whereas the citizens of the City of Bandera understand the importance of traffic safety, and whereas many people in our area use motorcycle as the standard form of transportation from daily commutes to recreational activities to long-haul tours, and whereas it is incumbent upon all vehicle drivers to look carefully for motorcycles, respecting their safety and sharing the roadway, and whereas whether motorcycle rider or vehicle driver, good judgment including not driving impaired is critical in reducing motorcycle crashes. And whereas motorcyclists and drivers alike must be educated in safe driving techniques to keep our roadways safe. Now therefore be it proclaimed by the City Council of Bandera, Texas, May 2021, it shall hereafter be known as Motorcycle Safety and Awareness Month in the City of Bandera, and I urge all citizens to join me in recognizing the special safety needs of motorcyclists. I will sign this and get you a stamped, authorized copy. And I appreciate y'all coming forward with this because we have so many wonderful rides in our part of the country, but they're so treacherous as well. And, keep your eyes out for the motorcycles. Stephanie, thank you. I'll get this to y'all next week. Okay. Item 4 is visitor to be heard. No one has signed up to speak, so we'll move right on along. Item 5 is discussion and possible action on the following items. Item 8, discussion and possible action on award of a construction contract for the street maintenance year 1 project. This is Jonathan, who's got a really weird last name.
Good evening, Council. Thank you for having me. My name is Jonathan T. Patiller. I am with Ardura Engineering. This action item is for the possible action award of construction contract for the street maintenance year 1 project. It includes 11th Street, Sycamore, Cherry, and Cottonwood for the street maintenance. Last Wednesday we had the bid opening and we received 2 bids from contractors within the local area. One from Ace Co. and the second bid was from Wagner Materials Construction. I believe you have that packet, or those papers in your packet. The low bidder for this was Wagner Materials, who came under bid at $299,571. L&B, in doing our research and getting references, we recommend to move forward with Wagner Construction Materials for this contract.
Thank you. Questions, council? I want to comment to council. Oh, I'm sorry, Tony. I want to comment to council that one of the things Derek and I discussed when this $299,000 bid came in was that if council wishes, we can roll in a little bit more of the Cherry Street project where there's no paving around by the middle school, where it's all just sort of a gravel road. But they haven't even worked up those numbers. That's up to council, and we can work on that later.
So we came in under budget. That's exactly right. Thank you for bringing that up. We came in under budget. Per the contract, we are allowed to do a change order for the budget for 25% of the contract amount, which leaves us roughly $74,000 that we'd be allowed to add additional roads that would otherwise be in other street years, because it's, a continuous process with different streets that we're working on. So we'd be able to pull those in sooner, freeing up the.
And the original contract, the original estimate for this year was $441,000, am I correct?
That was the original that included the engineering fee and all the other background stuff. The original construction estimate was $392,000. So the second bid was right at that, at $384,000, and this one came in way under, so we'd have 25% of that low bid.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Tony, you had a question?
There's some areas here that are wide discrepancies, and do y'all have any idea, what some of these, like for instance, the HMA TYD 1/2 inch, what is that?
Yes, ma'am. So that's actually the hot mix asphalt, and it's a type D. It's your smooth or your finished surface asphalt. And that was one of our questions, which is your biggest dollar difference between two contractors. And talking to Wagner, just kind of, I called them and asked them, just out of curiosity, and they're able to do all of it in-house, and they have access to a plant that, produces the asphalt, and so they're able to do turnkey rather than subbing it out to someone else, and so it cuts their price down much lower.
That makes sense.
Yes, ma'am.
I had one other question.
Questions, council?
I have another question. When we attempted to have, it's a totally separate contractor do Pecan Street, like not very long ago in my mind, there were some issues with disposal of pavement. Is that included in the contract, that they're in charge of it, we're not having to do
They
any
are
of it?
fully responsible for returning the site back to pre-construction conditions.
Okay, and then, did they do core samples and stuff? Do they know what the foundations of the streets are?
Yes, ma'am, I have those. Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
All right, thank you.
Anything else? Then I would entertain a motion. Darcy?
Make a motion that we go with the bid of $299,571 with Wagner Materials and Construction.
Thank you. Jerry?
I'll second that.
Jerry, second. Further discussion? All in favor? All in favor, none opposed. Thank you, Jonathan. Now you can go eat dinner.
Can we ask a question?
Quickly?
Yes, sir.
When's it gonna start?
So we will have, and we'll coordinate with the city, obviously, and having a pre-construction meeting within the next 2 weeks. And then our goal is to start when school is out, which, that's all wrapping up, so the sooner the better. Within the next 2 to 3 weeks, as soon as we have the pre-construction meeting and let them mobilize. Yes, sir. And then our goal is to be finished before school starts, just to avoid any.
Could you let us know when you determine that actual start date?
They'll let us know. We'll let y'all know.
And they gotta let the city know and coordinate with the city on roads and when the work in different sections is gonna be done, so we can coordinate with citizens.
Great.
So,
Okay, let's move on.
Thanks, Jonathan.
Thank you, Jonathan.
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, item B, discussion and possible action on appointing Bandera Economic Development Corporation applicants to fill vacant seats on the board. There's currently one vacant seat. However, the end of May, Christine's seat, Tony's seat, and my seat all expire. According to our bylaws, that person remains in that seat until someone is appointed to replace them. On the 27th, I will be resigning as president so that the board can get a new president. And on the 3rd of June, I intend to resign from the board. And that will go before council. So technically, theoretically, we kind of got this cart before the horse here. But one seat could be assumed right now, and another one could be effective June 1, if that's how y'all choose to go. So in your packet, you have the applications. I think, Laura, you're first up. Yes, Jerry.
So we're gonna hear from all of them, or all three of them here?
Well, there's only three.
Right, and there's all three of them here.
Yeah.
I don't
There's four.
recognize. I don't know.
There's 4 out
There's
of
4, but no, Mario's
Okay.
not here. We didn't expect them.
Laura, do you have anything you'd like to share with the council why you decided to sign up again, or what's motivated you?
Well, I feel like we're moving back on track. There's some
unfinished projects that were started when I was on the EDC previously, and and a couple of those don't cost any money, really, and I'd like to see some of those completed, as well as some of the other projects that, you're talking about now. I think I think it's a whole new environment, and
I think so too.
would like to contribute to. I feel like I've got some experience of some of the School of Hard Knocks, some of the things that were mistakes that were made by some of the previous EDC. I know some of the timelines, I know policies and procedures, and feel like I could give some leadership. Do y'all have questions for me?
Rebecca,
I'd like to make a motion if you will
do you want to
entertain a
review
motion.
all the applications, or do you feel confident making a motion now?
I mean, I'd like to make a motion if
Okay.
you'll allow it, and we'll just see what happens with it. But I would like to move to appoint Laura Davenport to the EDC board.
I'll second that.
Laura's nominated by Rebecca, seconded by Jerry. Discussion, council? Yes, Rebecca.
I just want to point out that in my experience working with Laura, she's always been an asset to the city and to the EDC. She's a very involved community member and leader. And even during this time period when Laura was removed from the board of directors, she continued to work on the UTSA E Squared program. She's continued to pursue economic development, education, and opportunities for the city, and I think she's an asset that I would like to see reinstated.
And I would like to comment too, resigning as president, but still being the EDC liaison with the council, I would feel confident with Laura on the board because she does have experience with how these things are done, and I think she would be able to help guide the new admin, no, EDC admin through the path and help her get on the right road.
I think I meant to say IC squared. Is that what? Yeah, thank you.
Yes, Jerry.
I'd like to say too, that with her experience and knowledge, I think she's going to be a great asset.
Thank
So
you.
I'm looking forward to it.
Further comments? Further discussion? All in favor of Laura? All in favor, none opposed. All right, Ms. Laura, back to work. Now, as I said, we have one potential vacancy, that will be me, but that won't come up until June. So if you want to move along and search for more applicants, it's Tony.
Some of these applicants I don't know, so, and are they here?
I don't think so.
Then I'm good. Thanks.
In that case, we'll move on and give you time to, we'll seek more applicants and also to do some background and invite them to the next meeting. Item C, discussion and possible action on retaining Steve Van Patten for reviewing and recommending changes to the 2018 building code prior to adoption and codification. Yes, ma'am.
May I back up just 1 second and ask Jill a question? Were our applicants notified that this was on our agenda tonight? Thank you, sorry.
This is part of this process of finding code amendments, and after being on a Zoom meeting with this guy, I finally understood what he was talking about, and I think that it'll help the council understand as well. This is something that he does for a living. He lives in Kerrville, and he's willing to offer his service to us to go through the codes and he'll give you examples of what we would probably miss if we just adopt the code as a blanket code.
Steve, could you unmute yourself and turn your camera on, please? Steve?
So-
This number?
No, I have his email.
He should be.
Is that the speaker over there or is it here? Oh, I can hear you, yes, sir. Your camera is, no, I can't see. You'll need to turn your camera off. I mean, on. It's right next to your speaker. are.
Oh, there I am. Sorry about that.
Everybody here good enough?
Hello, Steve. Can you hear us?
Yep, I can hear you. Sure can.
Okay.
Steve, I've kind of given the council a brief overview of what we discussed on Monday afternoon. So if you would like to share with them your expertise, what you do, and why it's important that we look at these local amendments before we get into adopting the code.
Okay, sure, sounds good. My background, I've been involved with the building codes, for more years than I like to think, but over 30 years. I started out in the city of Las Vegas, Nevada, a little over, I think about 35 years ago, as an inspector with them, and kind of moved my way back up through the process, so to speak. I've been in Texas now for 17 years. I've served as the building official for the city of Kerrville. I've served as the senior building plumbing mechanical inspector and interim assistant building official for the city of Corpus Christi. And my last assignment, before I retired, was with the city of San Marcos. I was with them for about 7 years, acting as their building official for them. So that's about the last 15 years I've been pretty well very active inside the code. As far as why I think, and I really appreciate you guys, the headaches that you guys are going through trying to adopt these things. But believe me, I've been through a lot of adoptions, and there's never anything easy about it. What we talked about on Monday was my intent was to try to clarify why we need, when we adopt codes, why do we need to adopt amendments? I know that's been a big question, and it was one that came up by your enforcement officer.
Hey, Steve, can I just interrupt you real quick? Can you hear me? Sir, Steve, when you move your mouth away from your microphone, we can't hear you very well. So if you could try to speak into the mic, the audio will be consistently better quality.
Okay.
Thank
Is
you.
this a little better?
I think
Yes.
so.
Yes. Okay. Then, I guess, after our meeting on Monday, I tried coming up with an analogy that might help simplify and why we need amendments when we adopt the codes. And, if you bear with me, I kind of like to try this on. When I go buy a suit, and I've walked on into Men's Warehouse, it's understood that the suit coming off the rack is not going to fit me. It's the suit that I want, but it's not going to fit me right off the rack. There's certain things that have to be done. I'm going to have the cuffs cut to the length of my legs. We're going to have to take in the waist. We're going to have to take in around the hips. There are basic things that have to be done for that suit to actually fit me. And if you look at your codes the same way, that's how they come. They come as not a one-size-fits-all. They have to be amended to fit each individual jurisdiction's particular needs and sizes. I mean, what works for, obviously what works for San Antonio is not going to work for you guys. And what works for you guys is not going to work for San Antonio. But you're both you could very well both be adopting the same set of codes. So if you look at it from kind of like that kind of perspective, hopefully that it will kind of give you a little bit of idea of what we're really trying to accomplish. There are some basic, just like buying that suit, there are some basic things that we need to do when we do adopt the codes. Well, first of all, we understand that the codes are just that. They're a basic set of codes that are drafted by industry throughout the United States. So when we pick them up, we're going to need to adopt them, make some amendments that fit us. Now in the state of Texas, some of the required amendments are going to be what we need to look at, like possibly requirements from TDLR. The state's going to have its own set of guidelines within its statutes and constitution that are more restrictive than what the building codes, the way the building codes are written. So we need to adopt that building code and we need to make an amendment to that building code to reference those state laws that are more restrictive that we must all adopt, whether we're San Antonio, Dallas, or Bandera. If we're going to adopt those codes, we need to come in compliance with state laws. Now, the rest of any other ordinances we got in there are strictly personal preferences for you guys to kick around. What do you want to do? What do you want in your city? What is important to you guys? An example that comes to mind, and I think we're all on the same page on this, is preserving the downtown area. Well, when you've got new folks that come on in and decide that they're going to take building one of the storefronts and change its use or change its use or occupancy classification, the building code is going to step right up and say, oh, okay, now you've got to comply with all the new requirements for that new classification. So by local amendments, you can come up with you can provide some alternate means or alternate methods that may fit a little easier, that are going to provide the developer or the design professional some alternate approaches that may not be as rigid and as the building code is specifically saying, this is the way you have to approach this. You may have some alternate means and methods that will meet the intent of what that code is trying to achieve, but provide some latitude to make it a little easier to comply.
May I jump in and ask a question right here?
Yes, ma'am.
Steve, it's Rebecca Gibson. Can you please, for the council, describe the 4 criteria that you mentioned during our call that kind of outlined how you would determine whether a code should be amended or not? And it had to do with conflicting state law, safety. Yeah, you know what I mean, right?
Certainly. We all find ways we need to, if we come up with checks and balances that we come up with when we're doing business. It's something that I came up with a long time ago. And the 4 reasons that Rebecca's referring to there is, number 1, I have a 4-point checklist. Number 1, does the proposed amendment provide for public safety? First and foremost. Number 2, does it keep the city out of hot water and keep it in compliance with state or other federal laws yeah, exactly, in the state and federal laws. Number 3, does it provide an alternate means for the design professional or the builder to meet compliance and with a little bit more flexibility? And then 4, the question is do we really need the amendment? So, other than number 2, it kicks back up and it says that there is a more restrictive state law. We need to amend that building code to reference to state law. We really don't have a lot of latitude in that. But any of the others, if there's any 2 of those other ones in there, it's certainly worth your all's time to consider. Is this something we want? Or is there something we don't need? Is there something that, hey, this might work for us? Or maybe not. But they are not required. Those amendments are not required. Those are ones that you guys want to tailor-make to fit your specific needs. And what works for you, like I said before, what's going to work for you, it's not going to work for San Antonio. It's not going to work for Kerrville. Those are personal items to address your individual specific needs and desires. Other than number 2, the ones you got to keep in compliance with state law, the rest of them are, or like I said, are worth looking at. And so what I will do when I review these amendments, I'm going to put back a checklist back to you guys. They'll either be a yes, a no, or a maybe. And I think if you read my proposal in front of you, I tried to outline what each one of those, the value that each one of those will have when you review the amendments that we're going on there. Does that help?
Yes.
Steve, I have just to expand on something. Something you said during our Zoom meeting that really brought this home to me was something about sprinklers in two-family dwellings or in residential new construction. And it's like, do we really want to make somebody put sprinklers in a duplex? You know, that was one of the things that was buried in there somewhere, that would we even see it if we just adopted all the codes?
Okay, stepping back on that. To bring that up to speed, up until 2012, I believe it was 2012, there were no requirements in the international codes that required sprinkler systems in residential houses. When 2012 codes rolled out, they required sprinkler systems in all 1 and 2 family dwellings and those items that were covered under the International Residential Code, which would take in townhouses, duplexes, and single-family houses. Well, the state of Texas saw that coming. So in 2009, they adopted, I think it was Senate Bill, I think it was 1014, but don't quote me on that one. But anyway, the Senate drafted a bill saying that no, we're not going to, a city is not allowed to mandate sprinkler systems in residential homes. So this is a perfect example of where the codes then needed to be amended. Because when, under the provisions of when you put a sprinkler system in the house, what the code realized that that a lot of the fire restrictive requirements, firewalls, fire barriers that were required prior to the 2012 were removed from the code, because now that you sprinkled the house, you didn't need those more restrictive elements to provide the same level of protection. So we needed to go, anybody that was adopting the 2012s in Texas needed to go back and pull the firewall provisions for townhouses and duplexes out of the 2009 codes and more or less bring them forward, so that we didn't end up with houses now without sprinkler system and no fire protection in them whatsoever. So they needed to be modified to bring it up. Now, 2015, the code council recognized that there was a lot of states that were not going to comply or had no desire to comply with that, or wanted an alternate means, and they have since provided the provisions. You can either A, build it like you did in 2009, which is more or less what it says in there, or you can do it with sprinklers and not have to put those fire provisions in there. So that is the reason that you would need to, when you run across something like that, you have to address it head on. There's just no way. The state required something that was more restrictive, or less restrictive in that case, but required, but now the code was not to a level of fire safety that we needed to be in. So it required that deadline. Did that help, Mayor?
Yes, it did. I don't know if anybody else understood it any better, but it certainly helped me. We have a question from Councilman Russ.
The city utilizes Bureau of Burritos for their inspections. Do they not follow state codes and?
Yes, they do.
And IBCs?
Where they're, most third-party companies, what they're going to do is they're going to, in this case, Bill Veritas will come on in, they will look at what you currently have on the books. And if there is, and I believe you're under the 2003, if they come across something when they're doing their inspections that may comply with the 2003 code, but is not in compliance with the 2012, which the state is under right now, they will have no choice but to fail it because the state code is more restrictive. So they will fail that. Based on that, there's a more restrictive standard out there that must be complied with, and take statutes on that. So yes, they will follow the state code.
That's where the Bureau of Adjustments comes in, or appeals, or whichever one it was when that happens.
For
Yeah.
variances, right. And that's why I'm confused as to why we can't just adopt the Texas state codes with the IBC codes. And the Texas codes will always supersede IBC, correct?
Unless you have decided to put something in your local amendments that's more restrictive. Again, let's look at the downtown area. If you wanted to, say, put in a provision in your local ordinance, which is something I would suggest if you don't have it already in there, that addressed the change. I'm not going to try to get too deep in the weeds here, but if you've got a clothing store that basically sits on the corner across from Old Spanish Trail, that's a mercantile business. If they went out of business and the next people that came on in wanted to put a restaurant in there, which would be most likely based on the square footage, is probably going to kick that up to an A2 requirement, or an A2 classification, which has a lot more restrictive elements built into the way that has to be done for fire protection needs. So what we ran across this, or actually we did, it was addressed prior to me going to San Marcos. There was an ordinance that was put in there that said, hey, look, the existing building code is going to require you guys to do this, but if you choose to put in the sprinkler system, even though it's not required, you can just forget complying with any of the rest of the codes. You don't have to, that existing building code, because you've provided a level of protection that is equal to or more restrictive and fully meets the intent of why that was that section of the code was drafted initially to begin with. So this would be an opportunity for you guys. It could be a win-win situation. If you had a developer that came on in there and said, well, shoot, if I can put the sprinkler system in, I don't have to do all the fire protections. I don't have to worry about changing possibly don't have to worry about changing my egress requirements, or adding different and messing up the outside of the building by adding more doors. But I've done something now that meets the intent, and you guys end up walking away with a monitored sprinkler system that, as long as it's maintained, is going to protect that whole downtown area, or that particular part, for the next 100 years. So that gives you, or however long it's being maintained. So it's a win-win, essentially a win-win situation for you. So, so an amendment like that would be your guys' amendment that would make it simpler and would provide a lower level of protection for you guys, I guess. Does that answer your question?
Typically, builders give you those options. That's where a good builder comes in. Any ones that I've utilized, that's who makes the alternative suggestions. I just don't see where we would want to be more restrictive.
He couldn't hear you. He just
Oh.
said.
Can we try that again? Unfortunately, I didn't hear all that.
Why would we look to be more restrictive, I guess, is the question.
I don't think that's what he was saying.
And we have builders, the builders give us those options when we build.
The example that I just used, if you didn't, you could conceivably end up in a situation when you went to an A2 that you would have to change the front facade of that building to provide additional exits. So you're going to be cutting holes in the front of the building to get additional doors, or have to move them because the code is going to regulate the distance between the two exits, or third if it needed to be in there. So you're getting into the point, you're getting into the possibility of changing you're changing the looks of your downtown area. So by going with the option of going a little bit more restrictive, by saying, you guys let's put the sprinkler system in, even though it's not required, now we don't have to worry about the changing that facade, adding additional exits out of the building, because you have provided a level of protection that is equal to or more restrictive than what the intent of what we're trying to get to. In that particular instance. Does that help?
Yes, Rebecca.
Steve, can you hear me okay? This is Rebecca again. I want to just bring up another conversation that Steve and I had after the collective Zoom meeting, where I asked him, and I don't know if we've got Bureau Veritas on the line. I had requested that someone from BV could be here. Because my thought was, I know that according to state law, we don't have to adopt codes at all. The fact of the matter is, BV will be inspecting to the standard, that the minimum standard that they're expected to inspect to. And my thinking is they've got to know all these state laws that supersede the ICC. So do they make those amendments? But they're a different kind of entity. They're a private company. They're not a governmental entity. So their process for how they do that and how they handle that is going to be different from ours. The way I understand it is the problem lies in if we do a blanket adoption of all the codes without the local amendments, and then BV comes along and they expect to a standard other than what we've adopted, that's where the city's in trouble. Did that make sense?
I totally disagree.
Okay,
It makes no sense.
Okay, well that's fine.
Because
And I'm
they
just,
go by state
but
codes.
I'm okay.
Yeah, well,
Hey,
you asked me.
easy, one at a time.
So I just want to make sure that I finish, or try to finish the rest of that, because I did ask the question of our city attorney, do we have to adopt codes at all if BV is going to be inspecting to this standard? He suggested that we do not adopt codes at all. He suggested that we have codes on our books that we've adopted, because we have no control over the BV side of it. And it's a protective measure for us. And in addition to that, if we are issuing permits and if we're going to be a part of the process of development at all in our community, then we need to have standards adopted. I think
Sure.
that's, yeah. Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you.
Those state codes are there for a good reason. I've looked through several of them. In fact, I have a little packet here if anybody wants to look at them. The differences between our current and the new. Most are very good changes. And anything that, like he was referencing, any changes that need to be made, just like always, they can easily come to us for a variance. That's why I don't understand what we're trying to achieve here by having somebody do local amendments when, if we rely upon the state codes, which we have to follow with no choice, that's not a matter of adopting an option to adopt those codes. That's mandatory. IBC, that's a different story. Yes, we can use discretion on what we want to follow with the international building codes. But the bottom line is, Bureau Veritas takes all this pain away from us from having to determine any of that. And that's what we're paying them for. Once again, any type of changes or anything where they don't want to comply with a particular code, that's what we're here for. They can come to us for a variance. And then it can be addressed. But it makes it very hard for builders, for one, to be able to give you an accurate quote. And when they do, if they're following the latest codes, they're going to be at a disadvantage to the other builders that aren't following all the latest codes because we don't require them. So you're not getting a fair estimate whenever you put bids out. I'm talking as a personal builder myself. I've had experience several times on building, and I've never had a problem with anything that was required by state code, because it was for the safety or better operation, better efficiency, or whatever it may be.
Darcy?
I have two questions and a follow-up. One, I guess, Jill, have we done a background check on Mr. Van Patten? Have we checked references and all that? Okay, and then, Mr. Van Patten, this is Councilwoman Hasty, or Darcy, or whatever. Do you believe that there will be any conflict between us adopting current codes if we were to employ you and when you get done, and then what we're trying to do with Simple City? I saw an email exchange where you were introduced to Matt with Simple City, and so I just wanted to check on that and how you felt about that.
Yeah, you asked me if I feel that there's going to be any kind of any conflicts. Absolutely not. Folks, I'm retired. You know, when Matt asked me to if I would be interested, I love Bandera. I will do anything I can to help those folks over there. You bet. So, I don't see any conflict. You know, I'm happily retired, and I've got a lot of knowledge here, and I'd be more than happy to share it with you, and in any which way I can.
And just to clarify, Matt introduced me to Steve.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna just
Yeah.
say. I personally have not done any background check. You asked me personally, no. The first time I was on a Zoom call on Monday at 5 o'clock with them, just to listen, so if somebody else has done a background, it wasn't me.
Way to cover.
I think the conflict was asking if there was a conflict in us adopting codes with what Simple City's doing, not a conflict of interest.
With the development standards that they're
Yeah.
providing.
Yeah, I know they'll comprende. One last thing.
He actually did address that. I think he just didn't understand your question, but that was discussed, and so I just want to fill you in a little bit. Matt had expressed, and I'm not sure if he's on this call or not, is he zoomed in? That the development, everything works in partnership and in tandem. So from Simple City point of view, this is an important step so that then the development codes, our local chapter 14, doesn't conflict with our adopted codes.
Yes, Darcy?
Okay, so I've done some checking and talking to quite a few people myself about this, so I feel comfortable in making a motion if that's okay.
Yes, ma'am.
At this time, I would like to make a motion that at this time that we do not retain Steve Van Patten for reviewing and recommending changes to the 2018 building code prior to any adoption or codification. Doesn't mean I wouldn't ever be open to that. But
I'll
not
second
right
that.
Discussion? Rebecca?
So I'm absolutely in disagreement about the need to get on to get the amendments done. So if you're objecting to the specific person, I think that's worth some more dialogue and further discussion. But if you're objecting to amendments themselves, I think that's another really important conversation. It's been years that the need to update our codes has been very apparent and very aware, but from the beginning, our attorney has said, you've got to adopt local amendments. You cannot just blanket adopt. And most of the experts and people in the fields that I have interacted with around this topic and checking other cities, they absolutely do have local amendments in their codes, right there on their websites. You can see them. Now, do I know? I feel like since I met Steve, I have a better understanding of the necessity. The one right off the bat for me is if any of these codes conflict with state law, then those have to be amended if they're going to be on our books. So I guess I'm just a little bit at a miss as to why we wouldn't go ahead and move forward with this project, unless the intention is to kick this down the road a little farther and a little longer.
Jerry?
What examples can you give me for things that we have on the book that doesn't follow state code?
Say again.
What examples could you
Oh,
give me?
from the
as far as the codes that we
2018
have
code?
here locally that
Well, I'm
don't
talk-
abide by state codes?
Okay.
And if they don't, is it because we haven't kept up with the latest?
May I?
Yes.
Okay, so let me pull up this website, because I don't know them off the top of my head, Jerry. And I have referenced a website where Steve, you might do better explaining the answer to this question, actually. We've got the website where the North Central Texas Council of Governments, and you might be able to describe that process better, but they have gone through the codes and identified everything in all of the codes from each of them that contradicts state law. And those are the recommendations for adoption right there. And so that's a part of it. So I can't list those for you. But one was with the swimming pool code. I mean, they're all there.
I'm sorry.
So if
Our local code?
if we adopt ICC 2018, then therefore we will be adopting all of these contradictions unless we amend them.
Jerry?
Correct.
Once again, I disagree.
Let me back up, I'll
Please.
try this again, but to address the cog amendments, that's the North Central government, what that does, that takes all of the building officials in the Dallas Metroplex area. They all get together every time a new code comes out, and all of that brain power, every one of those building officials get together, and they go through the code books, and they look for any conflicts. First of all, they look for any conflicts with state law, and they list them. And in their amendments, each one of their proposed amendments, they actually put in there reason. Why are they proposing this amendment? This alteration, and they will give you a reason. And in the swimming pool code, there's a lot of them. And one of the primary reasons that is repeated all the way through, it says to clarify specific state statute which regulates pools and swimming pools and spas. So in other words, the state's requirements under the state health code is more restrictive than the swimming pool code that you would be adopting by itself. So if you don't address the state statutes, then you're going to be building to a less than the state law. That help?
Thank you, Steve. Jerry?
Not really.
Absolutely.
I'm asking specifically, what kind of codes do we have on our local books that I'm not aware of that do not comply with the state codes? I'm not sure that we have any of our own codes, per se. We have state codes, we have Bureau of Veritas, and we have IBC. That's it.
Mayor,
Darcy?
I'm sure he's not familiar with our local codes yet, because if I wasn't getting paid, I wouldn't be reading it yet. So I will address, he just made it clear for me, because if I was going to make a motion, which I'm not at this time because we have an open motion and it's not on the agenda, but if I were to make a motion today, my motion would be to adopt the most current ICC and the state codes, both of them together. So what he just answered for me was, hell, as long as you do both of them, you're good to go. Why am I going to pay him $5,000?
Okay, let's call the vote, guys. Let's call the vote.
Comment. I totally agree with that, and that would be a motion that I would support.
Okay, let's call the vote. All in favor of not retaining Mr. Van Patten to go through our codes and help us with amendments? Darcy, Tony, Christine, Jerry, all those opposed? Rebecca. Steve, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Steve.
You bet. Good luck, folks.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
ya.
All right, item D. Approval for Bandera Farmers Market to relocate from 702B Main Gringo's Burritos to 415 Main Heritage Park for a farmers market every Thursday.
Sorry. Go ahead.
Okay, I don't even know who brought this request to us. You did?
I'll go ahead. I was at the farmer's market last week, and James and Eileen and Michelle and I, one of the other vendors, were discussing the possibility of the farmer's market moving from their current location to Heritage Park in the future, and so they are here to represent themselves. And would you guys like to address council on this topic? Eileen?
Oh, Madam Mayor, ladies and gentlemen of the City Council, I'm James, Farmers Market. For the last six and a half years, we've been committed to providing fresh seasonal produce and homemade goods in compliance with the Texas cottage food law to the people of Bandera. We've been out there in rain or shine every Thursday from 8 to 11. That was a plug, by the way. But recently, we've been approached by the owner dojos, and they told us that they had purchased the property that Gringo's has set up, that sits on. Well, previously, we've been hosted by the owners of Gringo's, and there was no issue there. The owner of dojos, we don't know, we haven't spoken with them in depth yet as to whether they will like us to stay there or not. So we're just looking at a tentative proposal to move. There's nothing solid yet.
Thank you. Tony?
I personally kind of wondered why it wasn't over there in the first place, because of the trees and all the other stuff. I didn't know if maybe it wasn't big enough, but.
No, man, we've been hosted by, well, Debbie Gibson was the one who set it up years ago, and that's just where we've been all the time, except for that short period where they had construction going on there, and we relocated in Mulberries.
I'd like to ask a question. Is there anything that the city would need to do to enter into allowing them to do that, or just?
Since they are a farmer's market, they don't have to have permits because that's a homegrown stuff.
Their permit is of no
They're
charge.
permitted,
Well, yes, but no
it's
charge.
fee.
Right.
But if you've seen in your packet, Dan sent us a very brief, very simple, y'all don't blame us, we don't blame you kind of statement, and every vendor will have to sign it and, sort of register with the city. And it's a very simple thing. If y'all would like to look at this, it's.
Becca sent us a copy earlier.
Okay, good, thank you.
There's one addition I'd like to ask the City Council there, maybe possible exception of policy. As many of you know, I put signs for Bandera Farmers Market on the back of my truck, but I noticed there's parallel parking there for most of the area in front of the park, and then it goes to the pull-in. Kind of like to still be able to nose my vehicle in there so I can continue putting the signs there so people know we're actually there. Because even though it's nice and shaded and that, maybe people just may not see us because of the foliage.
I think we could get with our code enforcement officer and see what he would say about getting y'all relocated and get you visible. Darcy?
After my negative last one, I'd like to make a motion if you don't mind.
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve for the Bandera Farmers Market to relocate from 702B Main, and I have to find out where Gringo's is going, to 415 Main Heritage Park for Farmers Market on Thursdays.
Thank you. And Tony seconds. Discussion? Yes, Jerry?
Okay, first, I just want to make it very clear that I'm very supportive. In fact, you probably recognize me. I stop by there every now and then and buy a few things. But so I think it's a great thing. And my initial thoughts when I saw it on the agenda was, well, that's easy. That's a no-brainer. But pretty quick, shortly after that, I had these concerns. One, and I'm not dead set against discussing this at this point. One of my concerns was that it's a business, even though it's not a huge thing. It's a business, and we're committing to allow taxpayers' property to be used for a business venture. Hopefully I can get some good feedback from people that'll make me feel a little bit different as far as that's concerned, because I would like to feel good doing this, or at least raising my hand on it. Another concern, thinking down the road, what happens when another business wants to do the same thing? Like maybe a hot dog stand or something. And I'm not being funny, I'm just saying, how do we handle that down the road? How would we handle that?
Tony?
So first, I would like to say, I think bringing fresh, locally grown produce to the citizens in the city of Bandera is a benefit, no matter whether it's on taxpayer property or not. I don't necessarily think that Heritage Park is used all that often, and I don't think it would be any sort of conflict with anything from 8 to 11 on Thursdays. That's a fun. And so I don't see any issue with the first concern. As far as the second concern, just like any vendor, any business, they come to the city, they ask to, where we allowed them to set up plenty of places where, I mean, a lot of them are on the corner, over at 11th Street and Cedar Street. There's been food trucks over there, but all they have to do is come ask. So that's the way we've handled it in the past. There's no different now.
We have the same
That's all
thing.
this is doing.
Darcy?
And I would say something similar. One, it's on Thursdays, and if it was Saturday, maybe I would, because I see people over there on Saturdays, but it is on Thursday, which is unfortunate because I work and I can't get there. And I think if it was a hot dog stand, yes, I would have a problem with it, but if it was a hot dog cart that
Well,
was movable, I would
Okay,
not
it'll be a card.
likely have a problem with it. So,
Okay. In that case, y'all ready to vote? Did you have a comment?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for bringing up the time frame, Darcy. We've spoken amongst ourselves. Eileen wasn't there today, but if we would move over there, we'd all be amenable to changing hours to 9 to 12 over the past years. Our limiting time has been Gringo's opening time, so they can have their customer base come in and not work around us. If we were there, we could shift the opening time forward an hour and the closing time forward an hour to afford more people that lunch break time to get in there. So we'd probably go to like 9 to 12.
I'd like to cast 2 votes now.
Yeah, I don't think Thursday's going to be a rush hour. Yes.
7 a.m. So I forgot.
I'd like to ask, has anybody, and this isn't negative, has anyone walked through that park lately? Actually physically been in that park?
Lately, like in when?
I'm asking like city council.
Have you?
Yes.
I mean, is there a point? What?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
there is a point. And it's not to necessarily put a stop to this, but it is a major concern. You really need to walk in there because right now, it's not safe for anybody to be in there. And that's another issue that we need to address. And if you take a look, I don't think I'm exaggerating. The paved stones are terrible, and they've got to be addressed. So if we do allow this, I would hope that we take action on the park and get whatever needs to be done fixed.
Okay, thank you. Rebecca?
Mr. Byrd, as the interim Public Works Director, can you provide council any input on the state of Heritage Park for the use of the farmers market?
Other than the access that goes to the tire store?
Huh?
You're talking about the parking lot behind Heritage Park?
No, sir, I'm talking about Heritage Park itself.
Right on Main.
No, the parking is what I was thinking that might be the problem, but the park is use itself now.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear that.
I call for a vote.
I had that here. What did you
The
say?
state of it is not
The use of the
safe,
park,
so I was
I'll-
asking what the
I
state.
thought you were concerned about the parking lot safety.
No, the paved stones the paved stones that are down, they're literally like up in the air and all
Well,
throughout
we'll
the
take a
thing.
look at that and see what we can do
That's
with it.
I haven't seen a
major.
plan, the layout of anything of how it would be set up, so it's hard to make a judgment call overall on that.
That's
And
not what he's talking
I
about.
just have to say that I'm embarrassed that I, myself, have approved tens of thousands of dollars for the city part. And this is not insulting, this is just a fact of the way I feel.
Point of order, Mayor.
When we've got major
Okay,
maintenance
that's really not the
to take
subject.
care
I
of.
understand your
Well,
point.
I think it's a good
and-
opportune time to
And
bring
we'll
it
get
up.
on with it. No, well, let's
So-
not discuss Heritage Park or the condition of Heritage Park, please. We
Sure.
can discuss that at a future meeting.
Call for a vote.
Tony?
So I would really like to compliment Councilman Russ for taking a positive thing on our agenda and making it negative. And second of all, I'd like to know why it was being brought up. This is a rhetorical question.
Point of-
Okay,
this is
okay,
not
all right.
necessary. Tony, a difference of
Hey,
opinion does
would you
not
please-
mean that somebody's
Jerry,
negative.
would you stop?
I had
Stop,
questions,
Jerry,
and
would
if
you
can't
stop?
respect somebody
Call
else,
for a vote, please call
I'm
for a
gonna call
vote.
for the vote. I'm
you
calling
love
for the
that,
vote.
but you'll get it.
I'm calling for the vote. All in favor of allowing the farmer's market? Tony, Darcy, Rebecca, Jerry, and Christine. All in favor, none opposed. Thank you.
May I please address the floor? I'd like to respectfully ask to briefly revisit item C, just for a moment.
Very briefly.
Okay. I apologize, I didn't bring this up before, and I don't intend to make a motion contradicting your motion or the vote. But our city administrator was present on the call on Monday with Steve Van Patten, and I apologize, I didn't before. I would like to hear your input on this
I did too.
issue of amendments to the code, because, we're revisiting this repeatedly. We were asked to find a solution to a certain direction, and I'd like to hear your input on the proposal and on the issue of local amendments themselves.
Yes, ma'am, in regard to the proposal, I think it can facilitate the process of using Mr. Van Patten. And on the other hand, I think that if the city attorney could make the amendments needed to meet the state law.
I'm going to take issue with that, not at
Cost.
$235 an hour.
Cost.
I'm not going for that at all.
I think the relevant point I was trying to extract here is the acknowledgement that it is absolutely necessary. And while I respect your opinion, yes, a city attorney could do the work, but it would be a lot more expensive. So that was all I wanted to
Thank
get
you.
out of that. And I'm sorry for not asking you before during the item. Thank
Okay,
you.
and I apologize too. I got carried away with the conversation. Requests and announcements. I'm going to put on a future agenda, and I can't guarantee the next agenda. We'll take a look get Public Works to look at Heritage Park, get an idea of what we can do, what we should do, what we can save, what we can repair, whatever. Any other future agenda items? Yes, Rebecca?
Yes, I'd like at the first meeting in June to revisit EDC board member removals and appointments.
Appointments?
Mhm.
Thank you. Tony?
I'd like to entertain moving the city councils back to City Hall, city council meetings back to City Hall. The other one is a citizen came to me, and I've seen this talked about quite often and heard it talked about quite often, but the intersections at Cherry and 11th and Hackberry and 11th, I've been approached explaining that that's a dangerous, those two are dangerous intersections, and they're both two-way stop signs, not four-way, and at certain times. And then there's several outstanding tabled items that we've had, that haven't
Okay.
been showing up on the agendas. I'd like an email assessment of where we are on those and why they haven't been on the agendas.
Okay.
And then the last thing is if there's safety issues in town, I would like some sort of protocol or something for city council to report those immediately. It's unacceptable to hear it at a meeting like this. Thank you.
Okey dokey.
Yeah.
Yes,
that was one of the action items. I wanted to discuss solution to the repair of the paved stones at Heritage Park. Also for funding of some kind of coating sealant on the concrete floors for the bathrooms at the City Park and Heritage Park. And that issue has been going on for a very long time, and the city has been aware of it, Tony, so don't put it on me, okay?
Okay, let's not start that again.
I'm not.
Any
Just
other
make it a
requests for
fact.
future agenda items? Okay, announcements.
You know what, I do have a
Yes,
request.
Becky.
I'm seeing Jill's email that she sent out earlier, and I'm glad that you did, but, and I don't know what time the webinar is that you sent it for, and I'm gonna be busy all day tomorrow, so there's no way that I can attend it. I would like for there to be, a training for city council on Robert's Rules of Order and other parliamentary, stuff. So I know that Jill sent an email, and I'll look at it further, because I'm just now seeing it on my phone, but it's from this afternoon, so.
Very good. Announcements? Yes, ma'am.
I just want to let council and the community know that today I was appointed to fill a vacancy on the board of directors of the Bandera County River Authority and Groundwater District. So that is a dual role, and I just wanted to let you guys know.
I don't know.
Yes, Jill.
I would like to let council know that I heard from Texas Parks and Wildlife on Monday of this week, and we applied for a park grant for a playscape over next to the K Park 2 years ago, and they have their meeting on May 27th, and we are like 99.9% sure we'll be funded for that.
All right, guys.
Can we go to the meeting?
No, we can't go, but we can log in virtually. But I've already looked at the agenda, and they've approved it for funding. Last time they approved, not last year because of COVID, but the year before, we're still on that list. They approved the first 20, and we ranked number 23. So this year we are number 7, and they only approved 16. So I'm very excited about that because it's been 2 years.
Yay.
So
And you plan to go right back and for the next cycle to apply as well?
I plan to go back for the next cycle upon council approval, of course, for a splash pad to go in the middle of those 2 parks.
That's going to be a tough sell. Okay, anything else, council? Yes, Marshall Dietrich.
Memorial Day Parade, Saturday, 11 o'clock a.m. I will say that the Memorial and Veterans Day parades have been going downhill on the attendance. I'd really like to see that start going back up.
Not this Saturday.
Not this Saturday, but next Saturday. So please, everybody, put the word out. Please come out and support our. I know it's not supporting our veterans, but trust me, they're there and they see and appreciate it. Please come out for Memorial Day and encourage others to come out.
Thank you.
Please.
Christine?
Speaking of that, we are still looking for people to be in the parade, so if you know of anybody who's interested, we are still taking applications at the chamber for the parade. Also on that day, at the Riverfront Motel, they are holding their butterfly fair. At the same time, we will be lining up for the parade, so if you're involved in the parade, do not go down Maple Street. Come down 8th Street to the gate, don't go down Maple Street because they will be setting up at the same time we're setting up. There'll be a lot of traffic.
And go by there and buy stuff.
And that too.
From kids.
Yeah, that's all.
Darcy?
I have an update on the wastewater treatment plant grant stuff. So I've been on the phone today with Congressman Shiproy, his staff, and then also the staff of Senator Buckingham, and then emailed the staff for Congressman Murr, Representative Murr. Congressman Roy is behind us and is going to support us on the grant. He would like to do it hand in hand with Representative Buckingham. They're at the end of their legislative cycle, so I expect to hear back from her probably next week after she has time to sleep. So, because they've been staying up late, but, talking to her staff, we should get her backing. And Congressman Roy says he will be talking to Andy Murr, and, we should be able to get his backing. So having those 3 backings will look really good on our grant. So,
Darcy and I were talking, and I reached out to Chip Roy's office, but she has a much greater network in the Republican Party than I do, and so I asked her to reach out to everybody she could. We've sent the PIF off to everybody. That's a project information form. Every source we can get. It's a little bit further down the road, so. Do you have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Sherry? Rebecca? Discussion, all in favor? All in favor, none opposed. 7:10.